right, hello everybody, welcome back. Today we are going to be doing reproductive system. This is quite fascinating material. May as well get used to saying different words such as vagina and penis. I'm going to joke a little bit about it at the beginning, and then I'll be very serious after that because I feel funny being recorded and making jokes. Reproductive system, I always like to get you giggling a little bit at first because everybody's a little bit nervous. If you're watching it in the privacy of your own home, of course, you won't be as nervous about it, but it is just a fascinating chapter. What we're going to do today is male reproductive system. We're going to look at the structures and talk about the physiology, so the anatomy and physiology. And it is just so fascinating how we can make babies out of these teeny tiny eggs and sperms joining together. It's pretty cool. So reproductive system. We're going to talk about the accessory sex organs and the primary sex organs, also known as the gonads. So the gonads will be the testes in the male and the ovaries in the females. And those are the primary organs because they house the follicles, also known as the sperm and the egg. Okay. The accessory sex organs, such as the penis and the vagina, are not the organs that make the egg or the sperm, but they will facilitate with intercourse so we can get pregnant. Okay. Now I'm going to zoom in on this picture. You've got this picture in your book. You've also got this picture on the screen. I know this may look a little difficult or be a little difficult to see, but I'm going to go right through these structures starting at the left top. So I'm going to go through the words starting at the left top. That's a peritoneum. That will be the serous membranes of the abdomen. You can see they don't cover and encase the organs of the male genitalia. They just lay on top of the bladder and on top of the tube known as the vas deferens or the ductus deferens. Okay. Down from that we have the seminal vesicle. The seminal vesicle is going to help to contribute to ejaculatory fluid. You could see it's dumping into the ejaculatory duct. Okay. There's a tube called the vas deferens or the ductus deferens. Take just a minute and find that. Okay. It starts at the tail of the epididymis, comes up and over the bladder, and you could see that seminal vesicle joins with it, and they both dump into the ejaculatory duct. Okay, so I want you to follow that pathway. If you need to pause the tape, go ahead and do so. The vas deferens or the ductus deferens is a tube lined with smooth muscle and epithelium in which the beginning of semen and also sperm travel through after sperm has been created in the testes. Okay, and it goes up and over the bladder, and the seminal vesicle joins with it. The seminal vesicle is going to release more fluid, and in that fluid that comes from the seminal vesicle, we have substances to help to nourish and support the sperm and also protect it. Okay. Now they're going to dump into the ejaculatory duct. That ejaculatory duct, you could see, runs through the prostate. The prostate is that kind of roundish, ovalish, acorn-shaped gland that sits just underneath the bladder. And the prostate is also going to contribute fluid into the ejaculate, okay, or the ejaculatory fluid. And that prostatic fluid is also going to help to support, nourish, and protect sperm as well. Then you can see sperm is going to continue down, or I should say semen at this point, through the prostatic urethra, the membranous urethra, and also the spongy urethra, and out the urethral meiosis. Okay? So that, I call it like the super duper looper, and some people asked me what that meant. If you ever went to Hershey Park, there's a big roller coaster that's a big circle. Okay, it starts at one end, it's a big circle. The vas deferens or the ductus deferens is a big circle up and over the bladder, down through the prostate, and then out through the urethra in the male. Okay. Going down from the prostate, we have the bulbourethral gland. Now the bulbourethral gland, you can see, opens into the spongy urethra. And its job is to form pre-ejaculate. Pre-ejaculate is going to be a mucousy alkaline fluid that will clear out the urethra of urine. You need to keep in mind that going through that urethra, you have urine as well as ejaculate. Okay, so it has a twofold purpose. Urine is going to be more acidic than sperm-like. So this pre-ejaculate will help to clean out the urethra to make it more alkaline, so sperm have more of a better survival rate. Okay. Then you could see there's different tissues of the penis. Part of that is the bulb of the penis. I'll talk about that in the next slide with a different picture. Okay. Looking down in the scrotal sac, we've got the testes. Now, the testes, so the scrotal sac is skin, it's some fat. It also has 2 layers of muscles, and those muscles help to either bring the testes closer to the body or lower away from the body, because the testes, well, I should say the sperm, do not like to be too hot. So the scrotal sac will either rise or lower in order to regulate the heat. It likes to be about 3 degrees cooler than body temperature. So it's kept outside the body so it can be regulated, or its heat can be regulated. Okay, so testes are going to make sperm. The sperm then go to the epididymis. You can see the epididymis is like a comma-shaped structure. Sperm go into the head of it, which is the top, the widest portion, and they start to mature, and they move down through the epididymis to the tail of the epididymis at the bottom of the testes. Okay, so once a man ejaculates, sperm will actually start to be ejaculated from the epididymis, go all the way through the vas and ductus deferens and out the urethra. Okay. Now, if we go to the top right, you can see the ureters, the urinary bladder. We talked about that. The ductus deferens we talked about as well. There are actually 3 parts to the urethra. If you take a minute, you can see that big long tube of the urethra. It starts at the bottom of the bladder and it ends at the urethral orifice, external urethral orifice, also known as the external urethral meatus. You'll hear those interchangeably. So you can see that nice length of urethra. There's 3 parts. The part of it that is in the prostate is called the prostatic urethra. Okay, so the part of the tube of the urethra that is in the prostate is prostatic urethra. You can see underneath that there's a little slip of muscle. Okay, that's actually a fairly big slip of muscle. It's like a little basket that sits in the bottom of the pelvic basin. It helps to hold the prostate up and also the bladder up. Does the same thing in females. The little bit of urethra that passes through that is the membranous urethra. The membranous urethra. So you could see on your screen, it should look like 1/4 inch long. Okay. Then you can see in that bluish color, that would be the spongy urethra. I'll explain to you why it's called that in just a minute. Okay. So there are 3 parts to the urethra. You can see the pubic bone, and you can see how the vas deferens or ductus deferens goes on the outside of that pubic bone. Okay, it can be palpated in that front region, that pubic region. The urogenital diaphragm is that basket of muscle that I just spoke to you about, on which the prostate and the bladder sit. Corpus cavernosum and spongiosum we're going to talk about on the next picture. Glands, penis, we'll talk about on the next picture as well. Well, actually, let me talk about it briefly here. You can see the expansion of the penis at the tip that is called the glans penis. Okay. All right. The next slide, you could see I have 3 degrees Celsius and lower. The testes like to keep the temperature, or their temperature, 3 degrees lower than body temperature. Okay, 3 degrees Celsius. Now, you could see the muscle on the left side of the screen as you look at it. That muscle is going to help to lower and elevate the testes. Okay. You can also see that there's fascia that covers the testes. There's 2 layers. We'll talk about that in a little bit. You can see the different layers of the skin as well. You can see there's skin, and the next layer in is a muscle that helps to either wrinkle the scrotal sac or let it smooth. and that helps to either raise or lower the testes as well. Looking on the right side, you could see superficial inguinal ring. Now, through that superficial inguinal ring, if we were to move upwards, you would be in the inguinal canal. So that's going to be the external opening of the inguinal canal, and passing through that. So once again, if you can't see this, please get your book out and look up in your book. This picture is in your book. Through that canal passes connective tissue encircling several structures. That connective tissue and what it encircles is considered together the spermatic cord. Through the spermatic cord, we have the ductus deferens, which we just talked about it. We have nerves, veins, and arteries. We have the testicular artery, which is going to bring blood down to the testicles and that region, okay? And we also have what's called the pampiniform plexus of testicular veins. So these will be veins which will bring blood from the testicular region and the scrotal region back to the body. Now, the pampiniform plexus is important because those veins can get dilated. And if they get dilated, they can cause a problem in the fact that part of their job is to remove heat from the testicular arteries and take that heat back to the body. We just talked about how the testes or the sperm do not like to be too warm. If they're too warm, the sperm will not be viable. Part of the pampiniform plexus, that series of veins, part of its job is to remove heat from the testicular artery and return it back to the body. So if some of those veins are not working properly, if they're dilated and the blood is backing up into them, you're not carrying that heat away and you're not cooling the testicular artery, okay? Now, if you look at the testes, that's going to be the white egg-shaped structure, excuse me. Sitting on top of it is the epididymis again, okay? Tunica albuginea and vaginalis we'll talk about in the next slide or two. Testes, and here they are. You're going to stay zoomed in because these pictures are helpful. So tunica vaginalis is going to be double layer of serous membranes that will be on the external aspect of the testes, okay? So just like we had all those double layered serous membranes in the abdomen, this is going to be a double layered serous membrane that's specific just to the testes, okay? Now, you can see tunica albuginea on the inside, and if you can't see this, once again, go ahead and open up your book. It makes what are called lobules, that tunica albuginea, okay? It creates little lobules that help to organize these teeny tiny tubes. If you look closely at each one of these little lobules, there are teeny tiny tubes located inside of it, and those tubes coil back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and create a huge area in which to create millions of sperm a day, okay? So the lobules help to sort of organize it a little bit better. Seminiferous tubules. So we're talking about the tubes, those yellow tubes that are inside those lobules again. Those are called seminiferous tubules. They are the tubes which create sperm, okay? So if you imagine that I take a tube and I cut it on end, that tube is now going to look like a circle, right? If you look at the picture at the top right, those are going to be that circular picture of those tubes. So it's like we're looking at that tube on end. I don't know why, but they only have like a portion of each tube. There's 3 tubes there. There's only a portion of each, okay? Each one of those is a seminiferous tubule. In that tubule, sperm will be created, okay, and pushed into the lumen or the opening, and they'll travel through those tubules to the next set of tubes called the ret testes. So you can see the yellow seminiferous tubules. You can see the next tubes over are the tannish ret testes. The ret testes will then send the sperm to the epididymis. Okay, so looking back at that picture, in the upper right-hand corner, there are a grouping, it's like a little triangular shape between those seminiferous tubules. Those are called interstitial cells. Those interstitial cells will release testosterone. So the seminiferous tubules create and release sperm. The interstitial cells are going to release testosterone, and you could see them in that triangular space between the circles. So from the testes, we're going to get testosterone as well as sperm. Testicular blood supply we talked about. The testicular arteries supply blood to the testes. The testicular veins take it away. The testicular veins are incorporated into that pampiniform plexus that we spoke about before. Okay? If those veins in the pampiniform plexus get dilated, here's a picture you could see on the left. Those dilated veins would be obviously expanded. Blood would sort of back up in them because they're not, because it's not moving forward. They're damaged veins. The valves are damaged. They're also wider. So blood would pull back into those veins, okay, or bunch up into those veins and stay in them. And it wouldn't be able to cool the testicular artery as well as it could in somebody who doesn't have this varicocele, okay? So this can be surgically corrected. I used to have this used to be a good link to video. Sorry, guys. But anyway, you can look up videos of varicocele repair online. It's quite fascinating. They have to be very careful not to hit the testicular artery, but they're pretty aggressive in removing those varicoceles, those distended veins. So interesting little thing to watch, clinically speaking. Okay, so penis, here we go. Now, once again, I'm keeping focused in because there's a lot of pictures here that I think are very helpful. If you look at the bottom of the picture, and if you can't see this, once again, get your book open. You can see the penis cut on end. Sorry, guys. Okay, so you can see the inside of the penis. There are 3 roundish or ovalish circles. The 2 at the top are known as corpora cavernosa. Those are filled with spongy tissue, and when a man gets an erection, they are full of blood, which creates the erect state of the penis. Now, the corpus spongiosum is the one at the bottom. Through the corpus spongiosum runs the urethra, okay? When a man gets an erection, the corpus spongiosum also fills up with blood, but not as much as the corpus cavernosa. The reason being is that opening of the urethra needs to stay open in order for a man to ejaculate through it in the corpus spongiosum, okay? So the urethra passing through the corpus spongiosum is why it doesn't get as full of blood, so we don't close off the opening of the urethra. Now, the glans penis is going to be an expansion that we talked about. That's also going to be part of the corpus spongiosum. Now, in most, I shouldn't say most, in some males, the foreskin is removed. The foreskin would cover that glans penis, and when they remove it, that would be known as circumcision. This usually happens when boys are very, very young. It's a pretty simple procedure. There's some different theories about whether or not to do this, but the basic thing to keep in mind is it does make it easier for cleanliness and for hygiene, okay, to remove the foreskin. Now, male duct system. So sperm is created in the testes. We talked about that. And the seminiferous tubules is sent to the testes. It then goes to the epididymis, to the head of the epididymis, then to the body, then to the tail. Through the ductus deferens, which used to be known, just so you know, as the vas deferens. So you may hear it as referenced as vas deferens. And then out the urethra. So we've gone through that whole process. Now, what I do want to point out to you in this picture is you can see how the ductus deferens comes from the tail of the epididymis and folds back up through the scrotal sac. That is the location that a male would have the ductus deferens cut and tied and sutured in order to prevent being able to impregnate a woman. Okay, that's the male getting their tubes tied. So they would palpate in the back of that scrotal sac, open them up, they would tie that off, and so then a male can not get a female pregnant. Okay. Epididymis is going to be the area of maturation, as we talked about. There's the head, the body, and the tail. The tubes fold back, and there's so many of them. If we were to put them on end and stretch them out, there'd be 20 feet of tubing. It gives the sperm plenty of time to mature, okay? And if it doesn't mature, it actually be reabsorbed in this tubular system. Now, the way that that happens, you can see on the right, we're looking at the epithelium. So we're looking at the inside of that tube. You could actually see sperm on the inside. And you could see there's a simple columnar epithelium. And if you look really close, there's little hair-like projections on the surface called stereocilia. And that stereocilia will help to facilitate releasing of substances that will help to nourish and support sperm, but they'll also reabsorb substances that are broken down. So if there are wastes, those stereocilia can get rid of them. If there are sperm that are not ejaculated, that stereocilia will get rid of it as well. Okay, so the epididymis. Ductus deferens or vas deferens, we went through this, goes up through the spermatic cord, over the bladder, through the prostate by the ejaculatory duct, and through the urethra. Okay, also known as vas deferens. The three parts of the urethra: prostatic, membranous, and spongy. I tried to give you a better picture. I'm not sure if this is better or not. Okay, prostatic urethra is going to be the part of the urethra that passes through the prostate. Membranous urethra is the part that passes through that urogenital diaphragm, and then spongy urethra is the part that goes through the spongy part, the corpus spongiosum in the penis. Okay, the opening once again is urethral orifice, also known as meatus. I believe they've changed it to orifice, but you may hear meatus as well. Okay. Seminal vesicles. Those seminal vesicles are going to be the finger-like projections that are going to connect down into the ejaculatory duct. You could see them on that picture. If you can't, get a picture open in your book, please. They're going to produce about 70% of ejaculatory fluid. The prostate gland will be about 30%. You're getting a little bit of the fluid from the testicular region too, from the testes, okay? But the seminal vesicles and the prostate gland are going to create about 95%, 99% of the seminal fluid. Now, once again, they're going to secrete substances which will support and nourish sperm, help to feed sperm. They also have alkaline substances. The environment of the urethra in the male and the vagina in the female is acidic, and sperm do not like an acidic environment. So what they do, these two glands, is produce alkaline substances which help to buffer that acidity. They also have antimicrobial agents as well that help to fight off any bacteria that sperm may encounter. Okay. Prostatic specific antigen, or prostate specific antigen. This is going to be a substance that is secreted by the prostate. Okay, I'm not going to read all the values. You can read through all these. You can see the elevated levels. Those are important. Okay, when you get up to the 10, the 2.6 to 10, 10 to 20, those could be indicative of prostate cancer. So the PSA is a blood test. Guys like this because the next test is the DRE, also known as digital rectal exam. So guys much prefer that blood test, don't you? And I don't blame you, okay? With the digital rectal exam though, it does help to palpate to see if there's any lumps or bumps on the prostate. If we move back quickly to this picture, you can see the rectum is just posterior to the prostate. So a physician can do a digital rectal exam and get a good sense if there are any growths or tumors in that prostate. So I think it's important to do both though, okay? I think it's important to do both. A biopsy can also be done if cancer is suspect, and the treatments are very good right now. The treatments using radiation are very specific and very effective, especially if caught early. And one of the clinical things that I want to share with you is diagnostic tests are so specific and they're so good. I think it's so important to get them done, and it's helpful to get things caught early. It gets harder to treat things, obviously, the longer they go. So it's really good to do screenings for these types of diseases, simple blood tests, make sure everything is okay, okay? Because the other thing to keep in mind, if we bounce back to this picture, part of the urethra goes through the prostate. So in males who have to have that removed, they can actually have a side effect of incontinence to the point where they would have to wear a diaper, okay, or one of those, you know, the adult diapers, I should say, okay. So it's important really to screen this early, screen it often, to make sure things are healthy. Okay, so PSA. Semen, it's alkaline. We talked about that. We talked about the antimicrobial properties of that seminal plasmin. That's the actual word for it, okay, that fights off any bacteria. Physiology of the male reproductive system, including meiosis, okay? So when a male gets an erection, the penis engorges with blood. We spoke about that. This happens under parasympathetic control. This is why if a male is very, very stressed, it's difficult for him to get an erection. Ejaculation is actually under sympathetic control. This is a reflex that'll happen at the lower thoracic lumbar spine. And a man will ejaculate through the urethra, and we spoke about that earlier. Spermatogenesis. Okay, I'm going to zoom back out because I do want to talk to you about something really quickly. Okay. We are just going to get in the very basics of mitosis and meiosis for this class. Okay. If you can think back to A&P 1, we talked about mitosis. Now, if I were to take my fingernail and scratch off these cells here, obviously I'm not going to scratch so many cells off that I'm going to lose my skin. My body will create more cells to replace these cells. That process of creating more cells that are identical to the original cell is called mitosis. In mitosis, the chromosome number in that cell will be 46. Okay? 23 homologous pairs. So 46 chromosomes overall. If we had two cells joined together that had 46 chromosomes, that would obviously not be compatible with life, right? Okay, we would have double the normal amount of chromosomes, and that would not be feasible and would not live. So what happens with, I can see that the screen is going in and out of focus. Okay, it's okay now. What happens with sperm and eggs, or oocytes, we'll learn is the actual word for them, is that 46 number, or that diploid number is the actual word for it. Okay, so diploid, number of chromosomes, 46, needs to be halved. Okay? The process in which we do that is meiosis. So your book has a very complex explanation of meiosis. We're going to just keep it simple and keep it to what I'm telling you for now. Okay, so with meiosis, we're going to have 23 chromosomes. That is known as the haploid. I always remember that because it sounds like half. Haploid number of chromosomes. So that way, when an oocyte and a sperm join together, instead of having, 92 chromosomes, 92, they would have 46, right? So 23 and 23 will form 46. So your book goes through the whole process. I just want you to understand which chromosomes, or how many chromosomes are in a normal cell. And in mitosis, you're going to create two cells with 46, and in meiosis, you're actually going to break cells down until they each have 23 chromosomes. So that way, when a sperm and an egg join together, it has the normal diploid number of 46. Okay. Now, looking at your slide, if you look at your slides, spermato is sperm, genesis is creation of. So spermatogenesis is the creation of sperm. Hundreds of millions of sperm are made by men each day. I believe it takes somewhere up to 60 to 90 days for them to mature. Okay, so they'll make the sperm, they'll mature, and then either they'll ejaculate them, or inside the epididymis, they can reabsorb them, break them down, reabsorb them. Okay, so these millions of sperm are created. Okay, the way that they're created, we go back to the seminiferous tubules, which are going to be in the testes. So if this represents the seminiferous tubule, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create, it looks like a little donut, keep in mind with the seminiferous tubules, you're going to have cells. So layers of cells all the way around this tube. What's going to happen is the cells at the outside are going to duplicate through mitosis and create 2 cells of 46. Those 2 cells then will divide again and create 4 cells with 23, keeping it really simple, okay? It goes through a series of steps. The first step of that cell when it divides is called, and this is right in your notes, spermatogonia, okay, spermatogonia. Those spermatogonia are then going to separate and divide into that haploid number, and when they do, it turns into a spermatid. The spermatid, as it starts to mature, turns into the, spermatocyte. Spermatocyte first, I was looking at the notes because I knew I transposed that. Spermatocyte, and then the spermatid. Okay, so this is going to be the process. Spermatogonia will be out here, spermatocyte will be in the middle, spermatid will be close to the inside, and then it'll move to the inside of that tube, and it'll be sperm. That sperm then can move through the center of the tube and be pushed into the ret testes and then into the epididymis. Okay, so matures from the outside in, and that makes sense because we won't put the sperm inside the tube, so it can travel through the tube and move through that system. Okay, so spermatogonia, spermatocyte, spermatid. Okay, and the sperm will have that half number of chromosomes. Now, spermatogonia are going to look like a cell. Okay, sperm, and they'll go through a series of transitions to look like sperm. And there's a picture right in your notes. I want to talk to you about the different parts of that sperm. Okay, I want to talk to you about the different parts of that sperm. Spermatogonia will look like a cell, and it'll go through transitions to eventually look something like this. Okay, so there's a head, there's a mid-piece, and then there's a tail. Now, the tail, we should already know, in general are called flagella. One is flagellum, okay? So flagella is a tail that helps to move the sperm forward. Now, the mid-piece is going to be where mitochondria is. If you have not seen a video of sperm, go watch one, because the flagella or flagellum moves back and forth so quickly. We've got to remember there's got to be energy to do that, okay? In the mid-piece, we have mitochondria, and that mitochondria will make a ton of ATP. And don't forget that around the sperm, the seminal vesicles and the prostate have given it food, so it has energy to create more ATP, okay? Fructose and citrate, for example. Okay, so the mid-piece is going to be important for storing that energy. Now, the head is going to be where the nuclear material is. This is where the 23 chromosomes are in the head, okay? Now, around the head, this is so cool, there's a little, what's called acrosome, okay? That acrosome actually has enzymes in it. So the sperm, should it be lucky enough to find the egg, will put that acrosome on the outside of the egg. The acrosome releases enzymes which will break apart, they're similar to something we talked about last semester, but they break apart the surface of that egg, they eat away at it, and then the DNA material can move into the egg and join in with the egg's DNA material. We now have 46 chromosomes, and almost immediately, the cell starts to divide and it becomes us, okay? Pretty cool stuff. Okay, so different parts of the sperm. Meiosis. So meiosis, sperm and eggs are the haploid number, the 23. Other cells are diploid. We went over this. This is the next slide. Let me zoom out so you can see what I'm doing here. Okay. Meiosis is the division of a cell down to 23, or that haploid number. At this point, we have crossover genetic material, because if we kept giving away the same genetic material in the same order over and over again, there would be replications, right? So we would have 2 kids that would be potentially identical. Crossover of genetic material will happen at this point, so we can mix up the genes and we could have different children. Okay, hormones. Actually, I don't know why I put posterior pituitary on your notes, so I apologize for that. We want to talk about the hormones from the anterior pituitary. Okay, the anterior pituitary is going to release two very important tropic hormones. Okay, so anterior pituitary is going to release follicle stimulating hormone. It's also going to release luteinizing hormone. Okay. It is big enough. Good. Okay, follicle stimulating hormone will create eggs. Once again, we're going to start learning those as oocytes and sperm. Well, it's not going to create. It's going to facilitate the creation or the maturation of sperm and eggs. Luteinizing hormone is going to facilitate the release of those sex hormones. So testosterone, progesterone, and estrogen. And those, somebody asked me about this yesterday, these hormones will also contribute to the maturation and creation of eggs and sperm, or oocytes and sperm as well. So it's a double whammy, okay? It's a double whammy. Both of them work together, okay? Both of them work together. So hormones. Okay, testosterone. Testosterone is going to create maturation of sperm and also those secondary sexual characteristics. Men who get really tall and really wide or just grow through a growth spurt, that's facilitated by testosterone. Chest hair, body hair, that darker, thicker hair is facilitated by the release of testosterone. Of course, this will spike during puberty. Voice drops, oilier skin, acne, okay, all these things are going to be male secondary sexual characteristics. Now, don't forget the adrenal glands are also going to release the precursor to testosterone. That's going to release androgens, but that's not going to be the main provider for testosterone. That's sort of a supplement, and there's some tie-ins with that during puberty, okay? Anatomy of the female reproductive system. That's it for today. We'll talk about female next week. Thank you so much, and have a great night.